Hello, so I'm Renee Mitchell. I'm Natural Areas Manager for the Department of Natural Resources. I work for our Pacific Cascade region. Um, I actually manage natural area preserves and resource conservation areas in the northern half of PC region, as well as some additional sites in the South Puget region. Today we're at the Chehalis River the Chehalis River Surge Plain Natural Area Preserve. This is one of the preserves that I manage. I manage 8 altogether, 3 different counties. Like I said, for 2 different regions. But the Chehalis River Surge Plain Natural Area Preserve, great place. Right now, we own about just under 5,000 acres. And to kind of give you a perspective as best as I can without you guys being here, this is a map of the site. It's an older map. We're standing right at the kiosk when you pull into Preacher Slough parking lot, boat launch area. This is the area that people always come to look at when they first arrive at the site, kind of get a perspective of what they're in for. But right here you can see, like I said, it's an older map. It used to show we only own this area, but we actually own pretty much here, going off the map, coming through here. We own all this in the heart, and then the southern part of it. We had a huge acquisition back in June of 2018, where we bought just about 1,400 acres, just over 1,400 acres. So you see, Cynthia and I are located right here. We're at one of 2 access points, public access points. This is known as the Preacher Slough Road access point. And then you come down here, this is our Blue Slough kind of boat launch parking area. A huge area, but only 2 small access points. We do have a 3.5-mile trail system going through here, as well as a 1/4-acre mile trail system. The site, it's very accessible, but to be honest with you, you kind of have to be on a boat to really kind of get a really good look at the heart of the surge plain. But one thing I can tell you, so Chehalis River coming right through the middle of the heart of the surge plain, you have these really large slough systems. This is Blue Slough here, Preacher Slough, Higgins Slough, Mochuck Slough. But kind of talking about all these sloughs and surge plain, one of the first things people always ask me is, what exactly is a surge plain? So the surge plain, the preserve is tidally influenced. So you have the ocean coming over here, Grays Harbor, we're in Grays Harbor County, but the ocean, which is bringing salt water all the way up into this freshwater ecosystem. And so what a surge plain means is basically when the tide is coming in, it is bringing with you salt water that is actually pushing up the fresh water, and it just kind of spews out all over this whole entire area. And like I said, it's that, I think from at this point, if I remember correctly, it's just about 6 miles from the harbor itself. So it's like it's pushing all that salt water up through here. So that's what a surge plain is. Like I said, miles and miles of sloughs, little backwater channels, little finger sloughs. It's a pretty expansive area. Like I said, this just located just outside Montesano, very popular site. I've been doing a lot of restoration work here since 2014 when I came on to DNR. You got trail systems, people come out to look at the wildlife, people come out, it's a very popular canoeing and kayaking area, got lots of trails where they could go. And yeah, it's just something that's kind of becoming really, really popular, which I really like. I've done a lot of work here, I'm pretty proud of it. But yeah, I'm gonna go take a look, kind of take a look around. So right here, this is, we walked down to the boat launch here at the Preacher Slough boat launch area. But this is actually the Chehalis River. And so basically, you can see, like, showing it on a map, it's like, yeah, it's a pretty big system, but this really kind of shows you, I mean, like Cynthia and I were talking about, the Chehalis River, it's pretty wide, and this is going through the entire heart of the surge plain. You can see you got some guys fishing out here right now. It's what, 37 degrees? I can't imagine that personally, but yeah, there's a lot of activity that happens out here. It's this area, you know, it's kind of a, it's weird. It has such a rich history, especially with the timber. Back years back, I ran into a guy. It must have been like 3-4 years ago, telling me when he was a kid here, coming out in this exact area and standing and watching all the logs being pushed through down to the harbor. It's hard for me to imagine that looking at it right here, but yeah, just the timber industry, huge history, the Native American use of the site, and still to this day the fishing and everything. It's pretty cool. So, all right, so right here we're located on what's called the Shoreline Access Trail. It's about a 1/4 mile long. It's a really pretty trail, and to be honest with you, this trail has taken up a lot of my time since I started at DNR. So when I started DNR 2014, and I come to do a site visit to try and get to know all my different sites, I come out here. The knowledge that I was given of this area was, even years before then, we were standing in what would have been like 15 feet tall blackberry, Himalayan blackberry. It was just literally all blackberry. The river's out there, and it was just a blackberry field. And so this area, it was all that blackberry was kind of cut back, and a lot of these larger plantings, you know, the alders and stuff, that was, you know, everything got under control. They planted them, and then that was really kind of it for a while. And then I come on. At that point, there were these large plants and stuff, but that was really it. And then it was just reed canary grass. I'm 5'5" on a good day, and when I come out here, on both sides of the trail, just overwhelming reed canary grass. And kind of give you a look at it, there's some of it. It's a constant battle. I've been working on it for years and stuff, but it is a constant battle. Once it gets into a system, it's really hard to get rid of it, but I'm doing the best that I can. You definitely got to choose your battles with certain species, invasive species. But so I come in here and I was like, wow, it's looking great with the bigger plants and everything and trees, but I got to get this reed canary grass under control. And so basically what it took was a couple years of like really just kind of blanket applications to get rid of it, and then to kind of bring in like this thimbleberry and stuff to try and bring other things in after I got that species under control. But the one thing that happens, and you'll find this in restoration, is that when you try and get rid of one species, you have other species that come back into the area. So when I got the reedgrass under control, then all of a sudden I started getting problems with different thistles. And then all of a sudden creeping buttercup came in like it was nobody's business, man. And so it was like, okay, choosing what do I got to battle next and everything while I'm trying to get some younger understory plants established. It was tough, and one of the reasons with this particular trail system, like I have other trail systems I don't have that problem with, but the biggest thing with this is because we have the Chehalis River located out there. So every single, you know, not every day, but especially in the wintertime when we get these high tides and stuff, it's just constantly flooding in all this seed from invasive species and native species, but a lot of invasive species. So it's just like seems like a never-ending battle. But what you see here is, I mean, this is, in my opinion, it's not just because I did it for so long, but this is a pretty successful restoration area. I mean, like, so once you get some invasives like reedgrass, it's a constant battle, but eventually you can kind of, it works itself out, but it's just, you got to stay up on top of things. So bringing in the species, the plants, after getting the invasives under control, what I always do for an area before I put any plants in the ground is I need to walk through an area and kind of see what's actually growing and what does good. It's not just, you know, what you read in a book, oh, it's a riparian area. let's put a bunch of snowberry in. You don't do something like that. It's like you really got to walk through an area, see what's actually growing, what's doing good. And hey, this is native, it should be here. I'm gonna bring more into it. So I did bring in some snowberry. I brought in some red elderberry, some thimbleberry, some more Pacific 9 bark, some salmonberry, a lot of salmonberry here. But yeah, I just kind of like took account of what was doing really good here, what was doing not so good, what should I bring in more. So it's kind of, you know, I always say I don't do textbook plantings. You know, you have to see an area and what it's doing. And even with all that reed canary grass and stuff, I could still see like the tall, you know, thimbleberry and salmonberry and stuff. It's like, okay, I need to bring more of that into this immediate around the trail system. Conifers, you know, cedar, western red cedar, it does good here, but the best honestly is like the spruce. So we did bring in a lot more spruce and when we did some plantings. Here's actually a spruce tree right here. It's kind of getting crowded over with those willows. And that was another thing, a lot of willow and red twig, red orange or dogwood come out, kind of took inventory of what exact, you know, was it Pacific or, you know, willow or whatever that was grown here. So I compiled a list, and then I started purchasing some plants and kind of putting together a really good planting plan. So if you walk down, you can kind of see, you know, some of these plants. And this, you know, like this snowberry here, this is just a tiny little 2-gallon, and it was probably about, I think I started first planting the understory in about 2015. So if that gives you, things do really good out here. When you got a lot of rain, you're right next to the river system, things do really good, including weeds, obviously. You know, stuff like this. It's amazing to see how fast this is 2020, I mean, planting something like that, how fast it grows. But again, it's like trying to imagine, like, you got the big alder trees and then some of the bigger cedars and stuff, but there was just really nothing here. And except for reed canary grass and then a couple plants here and there, but yeah, a lot of work. And then kind of trying keeping this trail clear. It's a constant battle. And I was telling Cynthia earlier, I had a crew come in and do some trail maintenance. That was really it. The COVID totally, when it hit, we got shut down for about a month, and I was immediately a month behind. And so just trying to, yeah, I didn't get to give this trail system as much love this summer as I wanted to, but it is what it is. So talking about reed canary grass, kind of want to show you and kind of get into a little more in-depth of the treatment options, what works best. Biggest thing I'm going to tell you though is that every site is unique, every site is different. Because you did control in one way at one site, you go to a different site, you're going to have to look for completely different methods, okay? It really depends on what's going on. If I would have come in here to get things under control, reed canary grass, and I had a bunch of other plants, that would have completely changed the way I approached this. So again, coming here when I first started, 6-foot tall reed canary grass, I evaluated it, there wasn't much else growing underneath it. What I did was, okay, this is going to need a blanket application. Blanket application meaning herbicide application. With it being so tall, am I going to go in and start spraying herbicide 6 feet tall? No way. So what I did was started, basically everything was brush cut. So going out into as far as I felt was necessary, brush cut that reed canary grass. And what that does, gets down to the ground, and as it grows back, you can approach it at a more manageable level. I was telling Cynthia, I'm huge on integrated vegetation management. I don't just do one method and that's it. I don't just go spray herbicide. I utilize, like when I evaluate a site, and it's like, hey, I need to do this first before I can do this, before I can do this. So I come out here, and I think if I remember correctly, I had a crew, and we're out here and we just cut and cut. This is a 1/4 mile trail, going out in some instances 50 plus feet, right? So we come out here, cut the reed canary grass down, and then as it started to grow, most likely to about like right here, that's when I brought in the herbicide. And what I utilized to begin with was just glyphosate. And coming out here, and because this is an aquatic area, I have to use aquatic herbicides. And so I brought in the proper mixture. We basically did what we call in this business a blanket application, which is basically you're blanketing the ground. And then with reed canary grass, was that enough just once? No. This had to happen a couple different times. And like I said, also we started getting different invasives coming up and everything. The reed canary grass, it is like, it's one of the toughest to deal with, but it is possible. And like I said before, are you going to completely get it out of a system? Most likely not, but the goal is to try and get it to a manageable level. And so, like this, still got reed canary grass, but this is, I mean, nothing compared to what was here. And honestly, the only reason this is here is because I was so overwhelmed this summer due to the COVID being behind. It just, and then the fire season, I won't even get into that. But yeah, I mean, it's like coming here, it forms such a dense matting system, its rhizomes. And then, like I said before earlier, you're constantly getting seed coming in from the river. The whole Chehalis River is lined with reed canary grass. But it's like, my goal, was I ever like thinking I was going to get complete eradication? No. Reed canary grass is kind of around this area, it's here to stay. But it's like you can't get it to a manageable level to really kind of recuperate an area. And I'm pretty happy with this. But I'm hoping to definitely get out here and get a little bit better, spot spraying, which is basically, if this were the springtime and everything, even though it's still here, it's down to where I can do spot spraying, which is pretty awesome. Okay, so we're at another stopping point along the Shoreline Access Trail, and I wanted to show you guys this place in particular for a couple different reasons. So Shoreline Access Trail, the reason why this trail was developed years back before I come on was because there was a lot of public interest in getting more access to the river and like having a trail system and being able to fish from the river and everything. And so when this trail was completed, there's kind of these little stopping points where you were like this bench right here. You could just sit here and look at the river. You could fish and everything. But one of the things that's been happening in this area, and it's just natural, but there's been a lot of erosion that's happened. And so you look at all these plantings and stuff right here. This was never actually meant to be here. When I started, this place was just completely level, just grass. And like I said, you could just enjoy the water. But we've had a lot of issues, like a lot of big king tides and stuff through the winter time. And since I've started in 14, the last 6 years, the erosion here has just been incredible. I mean, we're right along the Chehalis River. Like I said, it's expected, but it just kind of started concerning me. I was like, I have to do something about this, or else all of this is just going to be washed away. And so I'm trying to think, at least maybe 3-4 years ago, you see these cedars and these other plants here come in and planted this just to try and get some stabilization. If you kind of walk out here a little closer, I'm going to walk out to the water's edge. So right here, and you can see the water, and I mean, this is like, you're talking at least a good 20 feet or so of shoreline that has disappeared since I started. It's just eroded. And that nice little thing over there, that just kind of floated in like years back. But you can see, I mean, the erosion that's happened. I mean, it's cut away the bank to right here, and how far away we're, what, like maybe 15 feet away, maybe 20 feet away from this bench. So coming here and realizing it's like, okay, I'm trying to restore this trail and get everything under control invasive species wise, but here it's like now I'm dealing with erosion issues, and it's like I don't want to put all this money and time into saving this trail only to have it get washed out. So I brought a crew in here, purchased a bunch of conifers, something that could develop a really big root system, try and bind that soil together and stuff, and we just planted. And I try to, however, keep a nice view. I'll try my best to keep the trees pruned back and stuff so people can still come here and enjoy and just fish. And a lot of people do it, but yeah, it's like the first step. It's like before you want to spend a bunch of money in engineering like a shoreline, let's try a little bioengineering, get some plants in here to try and, like I say, get that soil together, because when it was just grass out here, there was nothing to keep the soil in place. And so, I mean, the last few years, it's looking great. I just hope that it kind of maybe helps slow the process down so I don't have to close this trail system. Okay, so right now we're at the end of our shoreline access trail, and I kind of just wanted to reiterate a couple things before we go. Talking about plantings and stuff and evaluating an area for the needs, what's doing good, what's not doing good, what could we use more of. Not just, when I go and buy plants, I try and utilize on-site plant materials whenever I can. Specifically with our willows, whether it's Sitka or Pacific willows, or red rhodoids or dogwood. I do a lot of, I like to do a lot of life staking. You can actually go up, so this is a willow right here, Sitka willow. I can go and I can cut right here, cut off all these lateral branches, make a nice top cut, and I can make future trees out of a stick. And then what you do is take that, put it into the ground, voila, all of a sudden you have a tree, another new willow tree growing. And so Cynthia and I were talking about that, and just like how important it is, and it'll save you a lot of money in the long run, anytime you can use on-site plants to create future plants or additional plants. And then also, one thing I kind of wanted to mention was, before we do any large-scale restoration in any of our sites, especially, if you're using grant money, capital funds, we consult with our Native American tribes, because the Surge Plain here, just like the Maima Mounds, another area I manage, a lot of cultural resources still highly valued by the tribes. And so before I go in large scale, if I'm going to be digging a hole in an area, or even putting in live stakes on a mass scale, that's something I want the tribes to know about. And a lot of times what I'll do is kind of set up a letter, and sometimes usually try and get it okayed through our cultural resources tribal liaison. I think, can't remember her name right now, Joan something, Joan McGurr. And so we like to kind of send them a letter. It's like, hey, this area, we're going to be doing this, and we'll send it to all the tribes that would be interested, local tribes and whatnot. It's like, we're going to be doing this, just wanted you to know about it. We're going to be digging, the area's been evaluated for potential cultural sources, but still, it's like, wanted you to know. Do you have any questions, comments? Would you like to come out and join us? Sometimes it's hit or miss. Someone say, oh, no concerns. You won't hear anything, but then once in a while you get that good bite, like, hey, I'd like to come join you. And that's one of the best for me, is especially at Maima Mounds, seeing tribes come out, do the gathering of the camas, utilizing traditional methods. It's just a sight to see. It's awesome. And a lot of people, there's a family and elders that they do a lot of fishing here. And it's just you're doing good business, and you're being a good neighbor, and it's just being really respectful. And I can't it's just very important that you do that. And especially, like I said, our natural areas, they're not just they're valued by everybody, including our tribes. So here we are at the Blue Slough public entrance of the preserve. That's right, we were back here before at the shoreline access trail going along the Chehalis River. So Cynthia and I drove down here all along. This is what we call the 3.5 mile interpretive trail. So we took the road system down here, cut up, and so now we're right here. And Blue Slough, I've been on anything that's navigable in here, and to be quite honest with you, Blue Slough is my favorite slough to go. And I recommend going to Blue Slough if you're ever into kayaking or canoeing. It's the Chehalis River itself is a very calm water system in comparison to other rivers, and then we have all these other sloughs, but Blue Slough is the most calm and beautiful slough, my opinion. And I love coming out here, and we're going to show you a couple different things. But first, we're going to go walk down over to the dock where you're going to see a bunch of historic pilings. The one thing I always like to point out to people is the interpretive trail system, 3.5 miles, basically follows an old railroad grade. And when we walk out to the water here, you're going to see the old pilings where they used to tie up the logs and stuff. Because, like I was talking before, they used to take logs all the way down the river system, and they did it in the sloughs here. But it's kind of interesting, like with the logging history of this place, when you see how much an area can repair itself in like 100 years, it's pretty incredible. So let's go take a walk. Low enough tide where you can really see the pilings too. You want me to talk about the pilings a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Alrighty. So, like I was talking about the pilings, this is just kind of an example. These pilings have been here. I believe the railroad was up and running about, I want to say like 1915. It was kind of, I won't say totally short-lived, but they didn't use it for too long. And I'm trying to pre-COVID here. I can't remember when they stopped using it, but anyhow, the pilings are what kind of remain, showing like all the logging history of the area. And this area here, the tide's out a little bit, so they're pretty prominent. I've been told, I've kind of gotten mixed answers on, are these pilings creosoted, are they not? Come to find out, some of them are and some of them aren't. All throughout the whole entire system, not just Blue Slough, but Mochuck Slough, Peel Slough, there's pilings, thousands of them throughout the preserve, throughout the surge plain itself. Is it something we ever look at like removing? Most likely not, unless they start to eventually break down through time. But I mean, they're still standing pretty tall and clear here. But one of the things I do want to add is when you go to do something like piling removal in a system, you do take the chance that, this is following along Blue Slough Road. It can cause a lot of erosion problems and stuff that I don't even want to think about. But also, with our preserves, I probably didn't mention before, our cultural resources, these are considered a cultural resource. They've been around since the early 1900s, and it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like for me, I want to say maybe a little bittersweet. It's like you look at them and you think, wow, it's kind of cool, but think about all the logging that took place here. But then also it's like, wow, look at how it recovered itself. But I think historically and educational wise, it is important that these are still here and we haven't removed them, because obviously, if they weren't here, some of that history could be lost. And like I said, cultural resources, it's, Native Americans, the logging, I mean, anything over 50 years old on our sites, we're not supposed to touch, or we better have a pretty good reason for. But Blue Slough, beautiful. I've taken some of the most prettiest pictures my time out here at Blue Slough. It's a gorgeous system. As you can see, it is very calm. Um, yeah, there's nothing like riding around here on an airboat. But it's pretty incredible. Um, but yeah, it's just kind of a nice, historically to bring a class out here and try and imagine like this huge logging operation going back. It's hard for me to fathom. Um, there used to be an old shaker mill not too far down the road. I mean, this place was really hopping, but you see, like 100 years later, it's beautiful again. So we're about 2 minutes in. Um, we're along the interpretive trail. We just kind of left the Blue Slough parking lot, and this car passed by. So right now, like 2 minutes into the trail, there's this large Sitka spruce tree, and Cynthia and I, we've brought classes down here through the years. I just wanted to kind of give you like a perspective of the size of this thing. So this, I had a crew out here a few years back, and they were brushing along the trail. And the crew supervisor, he'd asked me, he says, hey, this big tree, and his name's John. And so I always call this tree Big John, because he's like, hey, can we brush down? I said, yeah, that'd be great, And the crew was just so fascinated, because a lot of the guys, the correction crew guys, had never seen a tree this large before. And they actually measured it, so it's about 26 feet DBH, and if you don't know what that means, it's a diameter breast height, which kind of comes up with about like comes right up to about here on me. And so I wanted to measure it at one point in time, but I was like, man, there's no way. I don't know how they did it, but they climbed up, because basically they had to get above this buttress root system, or this buttress roots here, to get up to measure it. So 26 feet, not through, but diameter, that's how large it is. It is the largest tree that I've seen, like I said earlier before. I have floated every navigable stream, slough in this whole preserve, and this is the largest one I've ever seen. It's interesting that we're not that far off the trail we're standing on. And that trail that used to be an actual railroad system. And I always ask myself, I'm like, why is this still here? I mean, maybe back in 1900, 1905 or whatever, it was still a baby, but it's just incredible that it's still here. It's kind of starting to rot through, so one of these days it's gonna fall, and man, that's gonna be loud. But the size of it, 26 feet DBH, this is probably still kind of a baby as to compared to the other trees before they logged the area, what it used to look like. And it just kind of, the significance of seeing this, it's like imagining, the other trees that are just as big or bigger. It kind of really puts things into perspective. But it's a pretty tough ecosystem out here. I mean, the trees that have managed to survive, they're tough, and I always like to point that out to people, because it's, you got the salt water, partial inundation from salt water coming in, the rainfall, the storms out here, the windstorms, the erosion, everything that these species are battling. It's like, I don't know, it makes me really happy to see something like this that is still here. Like I said, it's the biggest one that I've seen throughout the entire preserve. They grow big and healthy when they're happy. They like getting their feet wet and everything, and as far as conifers go for this area, they're the best for saltwater tolerancy. But it's it's just huge. This would be a beautiful Marbury Murrelet would love a tree like this. But yeah, and this tree over here, this hemlock, it's kind of just fallen onto it. That's not a branch, that's another tree. So that's just, I don't know. It just shows you how big it is, and that's a pretty good sized hemlock that fell into it. If that helps out, put things in perspective even more. So it's pretty incredible.